The National Endowment for the Arts and the 173rd, it's a lot, 173rd meeting of the National Council on the Arts is now in session. It says gavel. Gavel. I would like to welcome everyone this morning, council members, NEA staff, colleagues here in person, and everyone watching online at arts.gov. For the record, the council members who are present are Museum Director Jim Ballinger from Phoenix, Arizona, musician Lee Greenwood from Nashville, Tennessee, arts consultant Joan Israelite from Kansas City, Missouri, arts patron Charlotte Kessler from Columbus, Ohio, civic leader Stephen Porter from Washington, D.C., and artist Barbara Ernst Prey from Oyster Bay, New York. There she is. Okay. Joining us by phone are choreographer and educator Miguel Campanaria from Hartford, Connecticut, music director Joanne Folletta from Buffalo, New York and Norfolk, Virginia, author Brett Lott from Charleston, South Carolina. We regret that Ben Donnenberg, Irvin Mayfield, Frank Price, and Karen Wolf could not participate in today's meeting. Before proceeding further with this morning's agenda, for the record, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March Council meeting? Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now we will move to the council members' votes and their application and guidelines review. I would like to invite our Deputy Chairman for Programs and Partnership, Patrice Walker-Powell, to take us through this section of the meeting. Patrice.
Thank you, Chairman. In order to preserve a quorum for at least 8 council members, we have moved this section from its usual placement at the end of today's agenda to the beginning, as several council members are unable to be here due to prior commitments, but they have agreed to join us for the vote by teleconference. The tally of the votes will be announced at the end of today's session. The council will be voting by ballot today on nearly 70 awards, recommending a total of $8.7 million in 3 funding areas: leadership initiatives, literature fellowships, translation projects, and access to artistic excellence. These funding recommendations are found behind the corresponding tabs in your council books. Please find your ballots in the folders at your place. For the council members joining the meeting by teleconference, your ballots will be emailed to you. They have been emailed to you earlier in the week. In order for all votes to be tallied, you must be present at the time of the motion, discussion, and vote. Council members' affiliations have been recorded in the council book and on your ballots, and each member has been provided with an opportunity to update this information prior to the meeting. Before voting, council members should review the list of recommendations and rejections and add to the list provided in your folder any affiliations that may be missing. Council members are recorded as not voting on applications with which they are affiliated. The list becomes part of the agency's official record. After brief summaries of the 4 funding areas, council members will have an opportunity to ask questions or discuss the recommendations before voting. After you have completed your ballot, staff will collect your folders and tally the votes. May I have a motion to consider the recommended grants and rejections under the Leadership Fellowship, Artistic Experience tabs in your council book? Thank you. Thank you. Now I will summarize the 3 funding areas on which you will be voting, pause for any comments or questions from council members, and then ask you to mark your ballots. Leadership initiatives support a wide variety of projects of national and field significance. At this meeting, the council is requested to approve funding for 64 projects in 8 arts disciplines or fields, totaling $8 million. Continuing support is requested for accessibility, including the Federal Bureau of Prisons Writers' Residencies and 2 other projects. 2 arts education initiatives, including the Strategic National Arts Alumni Project, or SNAP, which will collect, track, and disseminate national data about the lives and careers of alumni from secondary and post-secondary art schools. The Mayor's Institute on City Design, and 51 Our Town recommendations. NEA Poetry and Prose Pavilion at the National Book Festival, Film Forward, an international showcase of films and filmmakers, NEA Jazz Masters Live, a new initiative to create an online information portal for state arts agencies and regional arts organizations, And finally, continued support for NASA's Information Services Initiative for state arts agencies and regional arts organizations. Are there any comments or questions from the council? If not, please mark your ballots. Literature, fellowships, translation projects. Support translations of poetry, prose, and drama from other languages into English. This year, 16 grants of $12,500 each, totaling $200,000, are recommended. The proposed projects will support the translation of poetry and prose from 11 languages from 14 countries, ranging from French and Spanish to Estonian and Tamil. Are there any questions or comments from the council? If not, please mark your ballots. Access to artistic excellence is the agency's primary category of funding. As you know, it's been renamed Artworks as we move forward. This reviews arts disciplines and fields for ongoing projects with the goal of fostering and preserving excellence in the arts and providing access to the arts for all Americans. Recommended for the council's approval are 2 projects totaling $45,000. Access to the arts includes outreach to audiences across the country with a particular emphasis on underserved communities. Underserved is broadly defined in this context as those whose access to the arts may be limited by geography, age, disability, economics, or ethnicity. Examples of access projects may include touring or performing arts, exhibitions, artist workshops and residencies, the use of new technologies to make the arts more widely available. Preservation activities may include the conservation of artworks, documentation projects such as recordings and publications, historic preservation conferences and symposia, and projects showcasing community cultural heritage. Direct grants are recommended to 49 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. Are there any questions or comments from the council? If not, please mark your ballots. Finally, there's one project under the Awards Update tab in your council book. This very small $2,700 grant has been awarded under the chairman's delegated authority and is brought to the council's attention at this meeting, but no vote is necessary. Thank you. Now we move to the guidelines review portion of the agenda. At this meeting, the council is asked to vote on 4 sets of guidelines that were reviewed yesterday. Are there any questions or comments? May I have a motion to approve the guidelines? May I have a second? All in favor, aye. Any objections, abstentions? Thank you. Back to you, Chairman. Excuse me, Chairman. I know. Too early. Too early.
Let's start with the mic. Part of my job is I'm tongue-tied too. Part of the job of any NEA chairman is to spend time visiting the artists and arts organizations throughout the country. Over the past 3 months, my visits have included Detroit, Michigan, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Tucson, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and North Adams, Massachusetts. Each of these was a wonderful trip in itself, and I've met many new friends and colleagues. I want to spend some time giving you a brief overview of what turned out to be in NEA First. This past month, I became the first sitting NEA chairman to visit California's Central Valley, and it was a revelation. We started with Fresno, which has a very vibrant arts culture. I met the mayor of Fresno in the morning, and we took a tour of the Fulton Mall. Next, we had a morning panel with Suzanne Bertz-Rosa, who is the co-founder of Creative Fresno. David Masamuto, a writer who also happens to be on the board of the Irvine Foundation. He's very in tune with philanthropy and the role of the arts and communities. Samuel Orozco, news director of Radio Bilingue, and Craig Sherton, the director of the Downtown and Community Revitalization Department for the city of Fresno. They all talked about the importance of the arts in bringing back the city, which has had all kinds of difficulties with poverty, air quality, and unemployment. A lot of the city's working force is transient. There are real issues in Fresno, but there is also a real commitment that the arts can be part of the solution, which is very exciting. Our host throughout this whole California tour was Amy Kitchener, who runs the Alliance for California Traditional Arts. Amy introduced me to a number of local artisans, including Julie Tex, who demonstrated traditional mono basket weaving techniques. We also saw a performance by Richard Hagopian and his grandson, which was pretty neat. They played a few American folk songs for us on the oud and the dumbeg. We got a real sense of the traditional and folk arts as they're being practiced in the Central Valley at this luncheon. This has been Amy Kitchener's commitment for all these years, and it was great to be on a panel where people were talking about how the traditional arts and arts in general can be a real force for good in these communities. Later in the day, we toured the Forestiere Underground Gardens, which is really a whole underground world built by this Sicilian immigrant in the early 20th century. He was a very idiosyncratic guy, to say the least. Fresno gets pretty hot, so the idea of building things underground made a lot of sense there. There are underground living quarters and citrus gardens and everything. It's become a real tourist attraction. Then we drove to Merced, where we had an Artworks Roundtable on Wednesday morning. This was hosted by Stacy Santa, director of the Merced Arts Council. To me, she represents both the struggles and the hopes of arts organizations in underserved and problematic communities. She's had a real struggle to keep this arts association going. It's not easy. There aren't any ready patrons, and there's no easy public funding. But she is so committed and so dedicated to this that failure just isn't an option. It was just great to see her energy, her passion, and her commitment. She hosted what was really a conversation that I had with her in front of an invited audience. Merced is again a place where I think the arts can make a real difference. Stacy was really an inspiring force there. Then we drove on to Modesto, where we did a roundtable with artists and arts patrons and development people, and I got to see what they are doing there. Again, there's a really committed arts community in Modesto that I think is growing. This is not San Francisco or Los Angeles. These are challenged places in terms of the arts. The people there are doing it, they are committed, and they are succeeding. In addition to all of these wonderful events, I spent those days in the company of Josie Talamantes, who is Chief of Programs for the California Arts Council. In talking with Josie and others on the trip, I was also reminded of the critical role that state arts agencies play as NEA partners. The Arts Councils help federal dollars reach all of our communities, all of our country's communities, large and small, urban and rural, and especially in communities like the Central Valley that are sometimes overlooked by other funders. Our partnerships with the states are predicated on state governments at least matching the NEA investment, so that together our public dollars can strengthen cultural ecosystems that in turn build communities, generate jobs, promote civic engagement and social cohesion, and spur innovation. These are tough economic times for all Americans, and times have been especially tough for state governments. I would just like to take a moment to thank Josie, her colleagues throughout the California Arts Council, and indeed her colleagues at state arts councils and agencies in state governments across this country for their hard work, dedication, and perseverance. Now I'd like to turn to some exciting news that we have to share this morning. Today we are announcing the latest class of NEA honorifics in jazz, opera, and the folk and traditional arts. I would like to welcome Wayne Brown, our Director of Music and Opera, to begin the presentation. Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Council, guests. I'm pleased to offer a salute to those individuals who are being recognized by the Arts Endowment as recipients of two of the agency's Lifetime Achievement Awards, the NEA Jazz Masters and NEA Opera Honors. Jazz and the Arts Endowment can be traced to 1965, when the first presidentially appointed arts advisory body, the National Council on the Arts, was represented by jazz great and D.C. native Duke Ellington. 4 years later, the first grant in jazz was given to pianist, composer, and arranger George Russell. And in 1970, the first NEA program devoted to jazz was formed. By 1982, the NEA, on behalf of the federal government, initiated Lifetime Achievement Awards in the areas of folk and traditional arts and jazz, initially termed the American Jazz Master Fellowships and later renamed the NEA Jazz Masters. The first 3 awards in jazz were given in 1982 to Sun Ra, a remarkable innovator, Dizzy Gillespie, a giant of the bebop era, and Roy Eldridge, a brilliant trumpeter representing the big band era. Between 1982 and 2011, this national honor has been bestowed upon 123 individuals who continue to influence the art form of jazz, which is inextricably linked to evolving cultures throughout our nation and around the world. This past March, members of the Council approved the 2012 recipients. They are Jack DeJohnette. Widely regarded as one of the great drummers in modern jazz, he has appeared with virtually every major jazz figure from the 1960s on, such as NEA Jazz Masters Miles Davis, Abbey Lincoln, and Herbie Hancock. DeJohnette is known not only for his versatility on the drums, but also for his accomplishments on the keyboards. This 2-time Grammy Award winner has also made his mark as a producer and composer of television and video soundtracks. Von Freeman is considered one of the founders of the Chicago School of Jazz tenor saxophonists. With his individual sound, husky and melodic, he makes every song his own. The Chicago Tribune noted that for technical brilliance, musical intellect, harmonic sophistication, and improvisatory freedom, Von Freeman has few bebop peers. Lyrical and expressive on the double bass, Charlie Hayden has also created a powerful body of work as a composer, band leader, educator, and producer. He has embraced a variety of musical genres, ranging from jazz to country to world music. In addition, his work as an educator led to the creation of the Jazz Studies program at the California Institute of the Arts. Sheila Jordan is one of the premier singers in jazz and also known for her stimulating vocal workshops, which she holds around the globe. Her expressive vocal interpretations and superb scatting set her apart from all others. Jordan's career took off in the early 1950s after moving to New York City, where she appeared in jazz clubs and was part of jam sessions with jazz giants, including Charles Mingus and Charlie Parker. A highly acclaimed jazz trumpeter, composer, arranger, and educator, Jimmy Owens wears many hats. His involvement as an advocate for the rights of jazz artists led to the founding of the Jazz Musicians Emergency Fund, a program of the Jazz Foundation of America. Jimmy Owens is the latest recipient of the A.B. Spellman NEA Jazz Masters Award for Jazz Advocacy. January 10 of next year, on the 30th anniversary of the NEA Jazz Masters program, these 5 individuals will be inducted as NEA Jazz Masters in an awards ceremony and concert at the Frederick P. Rose Hall at Jazz at Lincoln Center that will be presided over by our chairman, Rocco Landesman, and NEA Jazz Master and Jazz at Lincoln Center Artistic Director, Wynton Marsalis. They will be joined by many of the previously inducted NEA Jazz Masters. Now let's proceed to opera. 25 years following the nation's recognition of folk and traditional arts and jazz, a new provision in the agency's legislation was passed by Congress in 2007. The authorization enabled the NEA to initiate another Lifetime Achievement Award, this time to celebrate individuals in the opera field through the NEA Opera Honors. These were the first new awards from the federal government for individual achievement in the arts since the early 80s. American opera has incorporated the best of diverse traditions, both within our borders and outside of them, to create opera works recognizable as American. By singling out the legends of our day, it is not only the extraordinary performers who are being recognized, but also the visionaries, directors, conductors, composers, and impresarios of opera, who have inspired others throughout their careers and are models for future generations. This past March, the Council approved the 2011 recipients. They are Spate Jenkins, who is recognized nationally as a leading authority of opera and as one of the most influential and accomplished general directors in the United States. Appointed general director of the Seattle Opera in 1983, he has strengthened and extended the company's reputation as a Wagner center by producing all 10 of Wagner's major operas. A well-respected writer and editor, Jenkins' vast knowledge of opera is reflected through innovative productions, substantial publications, and comprehensive education programs and services. As a point of interest, Spate Jenkins served as a member of this National Council from 1996 to 2000. John Conklin is admired around the world for his career as a highly acclaimed stage designer. In addition to his role as artistic advisor for Boston Lyric Opera, Conklin is also one of the principal figures in American stage design, both for opera and for theater, and his set and costume designs are seen in opera houses, theaters, and ballet companies throughout the world. Conklin has designed extensively on Broadway, receiving a Tony Award nomination in 1974 for the set design of The Old Payman. Robert Ward is highly respected and admired for his career as an American composer. His signature opera, The Crucible, was commissioned by the New York City Opera in 1961. With his compositional language in opera, derives largely from Italian composers Verdi and Puccini, his operas reflect a concern for the social and political issues of the times, and as well as his interpretation of American idealism. His compositions include 8 operas, 7 orchestral works, 3 concerti, and numerous shorter works for orchestra and songs for solo voice. Born in the Bronx and raised in Queens, mezzo-soprano Risa Stevens is known and respected worldwide for her vibrant career in opera. She virtually owned many of the great soprano roles. Her portrayal of Bizet's Carmen was a role she performed 124 times at the Metropolitan Opera alone, and one in which she was described as voluptuous, earthy, and white-hot in her alternating moods of passion and anger. A stellar performer, Stevens would also come to be known for her role in saving the Metropolitan Opera's 61-62 season when stalled labor negotiations prompted her to contact President Kennedy to intervene. Convinced, he ordered the Secretary of Labor to arbitrate the dispute, and 3 weeks later, the season resumed. Within 4 years, the NEA Opera Honors has had a tremendous impact. This is due in part to Opera America, the national service organization for opera in the United States, taking the video tributes of each NEA Opera honoree and airing them during a nationwide community outreach program called National Opera Week, which will be observed from October 28th through November the 6th. Throughout a 10-day period, opera houses, large and small, schedule open houses and let the public experience firsthand the excitement of the stage, lights, costumes, scenery, the story, the music, and the legends who made it all come alive. These 4 new honorees will be inducted into the NEA Opera Honors program at an awards event this fall. The celebration will take place at the Sidney Harmon Center in the Arts in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, October 27th. We hope that you will join us or log on to the agency website at www.arts.gov to watch a live broadcast of the NEA Opera Honors, as well as the NEA Jazz Masters Awards on January 10, 2012. I wish to acknowledge music specialist Katja von Schuttenbach, opera specialist Georgiana Paul, and music specialist Court Burns, and others from the performing arts team who have contributed to this presentation, along with my fellow agency colleagues from other offices who continue to provide invaluable support to this initiative. I'm pleased to address any questions or comments you may have about the NEA Jazz Masters or the NEA Opera Honors. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Barry Burgee, Director of Folk and Traditional Arts here at the NEA. Barry?
Thank you, Wayne. The National Heritage Fellowships were initiated in 1982 by then Director of Folk Arts, Bess Lomax Hawes. So we also are celebrating the 30th year of these awards, the nation's highest form of federal recognition of folk and traditional artists. This year, our panel considered 210 nominations for this award. Anyone can nominate someone for this award, and they are really artists who are deeply rooted in community and who have devoted a lifetime to their artistic practice. They're not household names. I often think of this roll call of Heritage Fellows as the list of the greatest artists you've likely never heard of. It gives me great pleasure to announce the 9 recipients of the 2011 NEA National Heritage Fellowships. Laverne Brackens, from Fairfield, Texas, a vital link in a 4-generation line of quilters in her family, Laverne Brackens has mastered the improvisational style of distinctive African-American textile aesthetic, characterized by the use of bold colors and striking asymmetrical surface patterns. Her work has been featured in touring exhibitions at the Museum of Craft and Folk Art in San Francisco and the Texas Memorial Museum of Science and History. Bo Dallas, from New Orleans, Louisiana, for 45 years, chief of the Mardi Gras Indian tribe known as the Wild Magnolias. Bo Dallas is recognized for his crafting of the elaborate suits worn in celebratory street parades, most commonly seen during Mardi Gras. As lead vocalist with the Wild Magnolias, Big Chief Dallas has toured internationally and has recorded seminal albums of music that combine New Orleans funk and rhythm and blues. Roy and PJ Hirabayashi. From San Jose, California, Roy and PJ Hirabayashi founded San Jose Taiko over 37 years ago. Taiko combines elements of drumming, choreography, ritual, and martial arts in an expression of Japanese-American cultural heritage. And the San Jose troupe became the first American taiko ensemble to tour Japan. In 2010, the Hirabayashis received the Foreign Minister of Japan Commendation Award for sharing Japanese culture in the United States. Ledward Keapana. From Kaneohe, Hawaii, Ledward Keapana, the acknowledged master of the slack key guitar and the ukulele, has been combining his instrumental virtuosity with striking baritone and falsetto singing over his 40-year musical career. Studio collaborations with artists from Dolly Parton to Eddie Kamai and numerous Grammy nominations for his solo albums attest to his role as a brilliant innovator as well as a keeper of tradition. Frank Newsom. From Hayside, Virginia, one of 22 children born to a coal mining family, Frank Newsom preaches and leads the hymn singing at the Little David Old Regular Baptist Church in southwestern Virginia. His a cappella vocals have been featured at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival and the National Folk Festival, and his distinct voice has influenced such artists as bluegrass legend and NEA Heritage Fellow Ralph Stanley. Carlinos Pandero de Oro. From Los Angeles, California, a master of the Brazilian frame drum, known as the pandero, seen in this photo, Carlinhos gained a wide reputation leading carnival parades in Rio de Janeiro, both for his incredible musical ability and his theatrical performances, which included juggling the drum and tossing it high in the air, earning him Brazil's Golden Tambourine Award as the country's most accomplished pandero player. Since coming to the United States in 1983, he has had a wide-ranging career as a studio musician and as a teacher of students who wish to be mentored in the Brazilian samba tradition. Warner Williams. From Gaithersburg, Maryland, Warner Williams has been performing his eclectic mix of blues, country, ragtime, jazz, and popular songs for over 65 years. His Piedmont style of fingerpicking and his distinctly textured voice has been featured on the Smithsonian Folkways recording entitled Blues Highway, as well as appearances at festivals across the country. Yuri Yunakov. From Bloomfield, New Jersey, Yuri Yunakov is the leading Bulgarian Roma musician in the United States, largely responsible for defining the saxophone's role in a repertoire referred to as Bulgarian wedding music. This lively style features virtuosic technique, improvisation, fast tempos, complex rhythms, unique key changes, and eclectic musical sources. The final recipient is honored with the Best Lomax Hawes National Heritage Fellowship. This award, initiated in 2000, is named after the former Director of Folk and Traditional Arts and recognizes an individual who has made a significant contribution to the preservation and awareness of cultural heritage. The recipient is Jim Griffith. From Tucson, Arizona, recipient of the Best Lomax Hawes Fellowship, Jim Griffith has devoted a lifetime to celebrating and honoring the folkways and religious expression of the southwestern United States. He led the Southwest Folklife Center at the University of Arizona for years. But in addition to his many scholarly articles and books, in 1974, he founded the long-running Tucson Meet Yourself Festival, which attracts audiences numbering over 100,000 annually. Finally, I'd like to thank our folk arts specialist who manages the Heritage Fellowship portfolio, Cheryl Sheely. Also, the Golden Corral Corporation will be providing financial support for the celebratory events that will be held in Washington, D.C. this September, honoring the Heritage Fellows. These events are produced in collaboration with the National Council for the Traditional Arts. We'd also like to thank our collaborator for the banquet, the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. I see Peggy Bolger, the director of the center, is in the audience. We invite everyone to attend the Heritage Concert that will be held on Friday evening, September 23rd. If you can't make it to Washington, the concert will be webcast through a link on the NEA website. And now please join me in a round of applause for the 2011 NEA National Heritage Fellows.
Thanks, Barry, and thanks, Wayne. Great additions to the Pantheon. I would now like to turn our attention to a topic that has become increasingly of interest to me in my job at the NEA, creative placemaking. Boiled down to its core, creative placemaking is simply the ways that a local community can use the arts to help shape its social, physical, and economic character. How does this work? Well, the Knight Foundation recently released its Soul of the Community report, for which Gallup polled communities to discover the factors that created a sense of attachment between people and place. The top three findings: not the economy, not schools, not safe streets. Of course, those are all important factors in choosing a place to live, granted. But they are not what makes someone love living there. The three drivers of attachment, the three things that make someone love their community, are social offerings, openness, and aesthetics. Three things that are the hallmark of the arts. Why is that? I believe it is because in this day and age, art is one of the few things that has to be consumed in person, in place, and in real time. Most art is place-based. Think about the typical artist's bio, which begins, Jane Doe lives and works in such and such a place. We believe that place informs arts. It's like the French concept of terroir. The best wines reflect the unique geography, geology, and microclimate of the area in which the grapes were grown. In the same way, the best art reflects its unique local influences. There's a wonderful organization called the Worm Farm Institute that has coined the term culture shed to refer to, quote, a geographic region irrigated by streams of local talent and fed by deep pools of human and natural history, an area nourished by what is cultivated locally. I like that, and I think it is a vital concept for any of us who care about the future of the arts. This place-based thinking informed a series of grants we made last summer through our Mayor's Institute on City Design. We wanted to encourage cities and towns to invest in their artists and arts organizations, and at the same time, encourage the artists to participate fully as citizens and members of a larger community. Those grants were very successful. In fact, they were the basis for the Our Town grants that we will be announcing on July 12th. And I've invited 3 colleagues to join us today to talk about creative placemaking, to talk about their place-based work, and to share their experiences with their MICD 25 grants. First, I would like to welcome Cedric Glover, Mayor of Shreveport, Louisiana. Mayor Glover participated in one of our Mayor's Institutes on City Design. We were together in Chicago for the National Design Summit that MICD hosted, and he and I have spent time together in Shreveport looking at the development of a Shreveport Commons. He's also become, and I hope he doesn't mind my saying this, a personal friend. He's one of the people that we've encountered as I've traveled around the country, one of the mayors, one of the political figures who really gets it, who has always understood the importance of arts in neighborhood revitalization, community building, and economic development. He's one of the leaders in the field as far as I'm concerned. Please welcome Mayor Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and do know that those feelings are mutual. On behalf of the City of Shreveport, its citizens and arts organizations, I want to thank the National Council on the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts for the opportunity through the 2010 MICD 25th Anniversary Grant Awards to take a blighted but historically significant 9-block area west of our downtown and re-envision it as a creative cultural district that will one day stimulate increased creativity and public access to the arts, resulting in a new cultural economy for the city of Shreveport. Our story begins in the early morning of August 25th, 2009, when an arsonist set fire to the Shreveport Regional Arts Council offices, or as we call it, SRAC, destroying everything in those administrative offices, including all data, storage, sets, and rehearsal spaces. Nothing was left. By 6 a.m., bulldozers cleared the lot, while I assured the public and the hundreds of artists and Arts Council friends that this would prove the start of a new day for the arts in Shreveport. The first step was to find new offices for Shreveport Regional Arts Council. Shreveport's Fire Chief, Brian Crawford, and Austin, Texas, Historic Preservation Specialist Gregory Free immediately saw an opportunity to move SRAC from the fire to the old Central Fire Station. Assembling a team of architects and designers, Free proposed design ideas that would preserve and restore the 1922 building to its original architectural splendor and increase SRAC's capacity to help other arts organizations and artists by dedicating 65% of the space as a flexible black box theater space and an arts resource center. But it was not enough. I wanted to ensure that the Art Council's move into this building would become a catalyst for the revitalization of this neglected area. Currently, the area we now call Shreveport Common is filled with abandoned, historic, and architecturally significant buildings, many on the National Register of Historic Places, empty concrete and grass-filled lots. There is little foot traffic except for the homeless. There is a single tree amongst the boarded-up buildings on Texas Avenue, a sad decline for Highway 80, which was once the main thoroughfare through Shreveport and the historic trail to Texas. Periodically, there are concerts at the historic Municipal Auditorium, where Elvis and Hank Williams got their start. But on an average day, the sidewalks are empty. Therefore, we applied for the MICD 25th Anniversary Award Grant in March 2010, and upon notification of the $100,000 award last July, we began raising local private funds first to design and restore the Central Fire Station as the Central Art Station. To date, SRAC has raised more than $5.5 million in local, private, and public funds towards this effort. One of the contributors is a national foundation, the Educational Foundation of America, who learned about our project after studying the NEA MICD grant awardees. Change is taking place. The grassroots inclusive planning effort has engaged those who live or are interested in living, working, or playing in Shreveport Common. They have met more than 50 groups in over 65 listening sessions and have processed more than 1,000 recommendations. In addition, I have appointed a 50-member advisory committee that has met every 3 weeks since January to ensure the integrity of the visioning process. Further, we have appointed a Shreveport Common Public Art Committee and have already launched a number of projects as a component of our grant award. Since the beginning of the listening sessions and the planning events last fall, many citizens have participated in walking tours, podcast tours, and trolley tours. Over 300 volunteers turned out for Shreveport Common's first Great American Cleanup Day, and we have embraced social networking and have our own Shreveport Common Facebook page, all abuzz with ideas and suggestions. Last week, the Shreveport Regional Arts Council of City of Shreveport, the State of Louisiana, the Downtown Development Authority, and the Louisiana Society of Certified Public Accountants programmed and hosted a seminar called Reinvest Tax Incentives for Urban Revitalization. More than 80 property owners, developers, builders, investors, and lawyers came to hear facts specific to historic, cultural, and entertainment and environment tax credits from over 10 regional and national tax experts. On this past Saturday, Gregory Free and the Shreveport Common design team unveiled the first draft of the vision plan, Discover Shreveport Common. During the 104-degree day, hot day that it was, proved that Shreveport Common is now the coolest new old place in downtown Shreveport. 600 potential residents, property owners, investors, and artists came out to see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and experience the vision for this uncommon cultural community. It has taken a one-year process to create the vision plan for Shreveport Common. We began our virtual tour on Common Street with a public art gateway on the main thoroughfare, fair connecting North and South Shreveport. We believe that the artists and creative people who will pioneer the area already have much in common. They desire a place that welcomes diversity, embraces creativity, is grounded in authenticity, and will be sustained by the talent, technology, and tourism that will make the district a viable investment. Once through the new gateway, we are greeted by monumental architecture that announces our new cultural district. One is the Scottish Rite Temple, currently being renovated, and the empty Benai Zion Temple that we hope to someday see repurposed as the Temple for the Performing Arts, offering shared administrative, box office, conference, and rehearsal space for all our performing arts organizations so that cost savings can result in increased programming. Next, we passed one of the nation's most successful nonprofit homeless-to-home organizations, the Providence House. To keep this outstanding neighbor a thriving part of the diverse community, our vision plan guided them to an expanded campus where now there are only empty buildings, broken windows, and leaky roofs. At Shreveport Common, we are dedicated to keeping these organizations and social service agencies an active part of our new cultural economy. The vision plan calls for restoring all of the historically significant buildings while introducing sensitive new infill buildings scaled to complement the historic fabric. These buildings are all mixed use with retail, restaurants, and artist galleries below and affordable living above. Covered parking is tucked behind or below the new construction and discreetly out of sight. Our approach for Shreveport Common is visioning through the eyes of the arts and guided by both traditional and non-traditional processes, including the NEA creative placemaking concepts. The vision plan celebrates the significance of the city's first cemetery, the Oakland Cemetery, and the historic municipal auditorium. Both landmarks are beginning much-needed preservation efforts, funded by bond issues and encouraged by the Shreveport Common visioning process. That place where Elvis first left the building will soon be updated for increased music, programming, and historic tours. Across the street, the legendary James Burton's Foundation has just completed a new recording studio, and they have purchased an adjacent abandoned building to restore as a classic rock and roll guitar and car museum. You'll see on the next street remnants of a once grand residential neighborhood, anchored by two of the finest Queen Anne mansions ever built in the city. One of our goals of the vision is to restore, relocate, and design new residential structures in the scale of this block for residential purposes. As the area develops into an active cultural district, what is now a lone, uncovered, unmarked bus stop, rarely used because there is no place to go and nothing to do, will soon be a transportation and information node called the Common Link. This is envisioned as a functional public art installation to be designed in the upcoming year, and we hope it will be the model for artistic transportation nodes throughout the city. That is, if our second grant, the National Endowment for the Arts, our town grant, gets the go-ahead. The centerpiece of our concept, just in front of the Central Art Station, is an acre of abandoned lots covered in concrete. As shown in the video, these will be transformed into the Common, an open green space with trees, soft grass, a water feature, and sculpture garden. A downtown park primed for creative programming, such as public art exhibitions and demonstrations, and a small amphitheater with a multi-use plan for infinite arts programming opportunities. Besides motivating community gatherings, this Common tangibly connects the now disparate parts into a cohesive ensemble of buildings, gardens, and venues for dining and entertainment. Note that the Central Art Station is one of those principal landmarks adjacent to the Common. Renovations will begin in August to restore the fire station inside and out to the Central Art Station, including the historic facade. Imagine these doors wide open, inviting an exponential number of artists and arts organizations inside, and the resulting programming spilling out into the streets and to the community. Arts programming for the residents of Shreveport Common and the whole community will include an array of day and nighttime festivals, arts markets, planned and spontaneous music and theatrical performances, and public art, some interactive or with purpose, such as creating shade or as bike racks, and some for simply enjoying. Across the street, in the historic 800 block of Texas Avenue, resides one property owner whose volunteer experimental arts venue, Mini Cine, has successfully engaged the young adults of our arts community. Until this Shreveport Common vision plan, the balance of this block was boarded up, but has now been purchased by developers for adaptive reuse as residential and retail. Just as exciting as the interest among local and state developers to invest in the area is the excitement created by the sparse existing businesses already located in the area. For example, a small group situated in an almost forgotten dead-end street near our historic Strand Theater have been working with the vision plan design team. They have created a name for their area, the Louisiana Cotton Exchange, named for their intersecting streets, and plans for a revival of the area. They are working to create an outdoor performance vendor area to complement and support their existing and new business ventures. Plans are to create a performance area by erecting a stage with a festively painted black backdrop in front of the railroad tracks. Brightly colored tents will line the edge of a now unused parking lot, creating an arts market and shade for outdoor concerts. Chairman Landesman, you and the NEA have taught that creative placemaking can build a cultural economy by starting with a vision plan. Thanks to the National Endowment for the arts in Shreveport are already at work. Restoration, renovation, transformation, and revitalization are working through the arts. The Shreveport Regional Arts Council and the City of Shreveport are making arts work in the very ways that the National Council on the Arts and Chairman Landesman envision. We are using creative placemaking to drive a cultural economy by starting with a vision plan, one that puts the arts and artists at the center of energizing a blighted and neglected area. Our vision plan excites and has attracted private developers, entrepreneurs, artists, arts organizations, and the community as a whole. The NEA grant of $100,000 has already generated at least $5.5 million investment by both private and public sources. We have a great deal of anticipation of a new arts-inspired neighborhood as a part of our community. It is a solid step forward towards making Shreveport the next great city of the South. Thank you.
See what I mean? Thanks so much, Mayor Glover. Next up is Christine Harris, who is the president of Christine Harris Connections and the consulting advisor to the Creative Alliance Milwaukee. When Christine and I first met, she was running Creative Alliance. With their MICD 25 grant, Milwaukee has taken a look at its creative economy, which I like to say is equal part Milwaukee Arts Museum and Harley-Davidson Industrial Designers, and is looking at how to define that as a sector, and then to make some strategic initiatives to strengthen both the sector and also the larger Milwaukee community. Christine, too, I believe is one of the real visionaries in this field. She is one of the people who understands how this works and is bringing real creative capital and ideas to this field. Christine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the NEA for this opportunity, and what a great story, Mayor Glover, on Shreveport. Hopefully we can follow some of that in the greater Milwaukee area. I'm going to tell you the story of a journey of reframing the identity and the perception of our creative economy based on the creative industries work that was partially underwritten by the MICD grant. It started with a cultural asset inventory in 2008 for our Greater Milwaukee Committee, which is a CEO civic organization. And the main recommendation of that project was to commence a creative community planning process. We purposely didn't call it a cultural plan. We called it a creative community planning process. And we ended up naming it Creativity Works, the Milwaukee Regional Creative Industries Project. The reason we called it Creative Industries versus Creative Economy is that that was what worked for our community, and that was the verbiage that tied our civic, our CEO business, and our creative community together. It was very critical that we were strategically partnered with our Greater Milwaukee Committee so that the business community was at the table with us. We ended up, after a national RFP, choosing Mount Auburn Associates and their team, primarily because they were economic development specialists, had been for 25 years, and started to do this creative economy work in New England in 1999. The United Nations has been tracking the world trade of creative goods and services for a number of years now, and their latest report in February of 2010 not only showed significant world trade of creative goods and services, but showed the growth rate between 2002 and 2008 to be 14%, at a time, in fact, when world trade as a whole was decreasing by 12%. And they called it one of the most dynamic sectors of the world economy. So we figured we're going to be a part of that. So the Creativity Works project was primarily designed to link and to leverage our creative industries. It was pretty broad-based. We covered 7 counties in southeast Wisconsin, the largest region to do this work in the Midwest, and it took between January of 2010 and January of 2011. Our project funders commenced with the United States Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration. I have to tell the story. The first call I made to the regional office director in Chicago, he said, "Be still your hearts, we don't fund potters and basements." But I found somebody in our Wisconsin Department of Commerce who helped me navigate those waters, helped me learn how to speak economic development language, how to translate my cultural development background and language into economic development background and language. We went through several drafts. We ended up getting a $150,000 grant, the only grant of its kind to come from the EDA for this work to a cultural organization. And at the end of it all, the regional director who I had that first conversation with has put it up as a national example of how the EDA can help the creative industries. We were then very, very pleased and privileged to receive one of the NEA's MICD grants to support this work, and that federal funding actually leveraged all of the local funding you see on the right-hand side. We couldn't have done it without the NEA and the EDA. We ended up defining our creative industries after looking at several months of different kinds of definitions around the country as the following: organizations, individuals, and companies whose products and services originate in artistic, cultural, creative, or aesthetic content. This was the definition that resonated across our community. We included the nonprofit arts, the individual creatives, the for-profit creative services and products businesses. We also looked very closely at the support system, the educational system, both K-12 and post-secondary, and we also looked at the financial support system, both philanthropic and private investment. The components of Creativity Works were very deep. We were involved in every single county and every single industry sector. While it was primarily measuring economic value, it was also leveraging and creating a new community. And in fact, the greatest benefit of all was leveraging to a brand new sense of community being together and connected for the purposes of moving our community forward. These were the creative business enterprise segments that came up as part of our creative economy. We measured the workers that existed in all of these businesses through NAICS codes analysis. We also looked at workers that were in creative occupations that might be embedded in other industries: an architect in a construction firm, a product designer in a manufacturing firm. They're part of the creative industries, but they work in other industries not defined as in the creative industry sector. And these statistics primarily come through the Department of Labor. They're all government-published statistics. So what did it show us? It showed us that we have 67,000 people employed in our creative industries. The combination of those creative workers in those business enterprises you see in the center and on the left, and those creative workers that are in occupations embedded in other industries. We were curious to see, well, this sounds like a big number, but how big is it really compared to other industry sectors in the greater Milwaukee area? And so we looked at that, and we looked at those workers that were in the business enterprises. It didn't include those embedded workers, and we found almost as big as construction, bigger than all of our educational services, two-thirds the size of our finance and insurance industry, in fact, also bigger than our transportation and warehousing business, and our new burgeoning economy of water technology, significantly larger than in that industry. We also found that it was higher as a proportion of businesses in the state of Wisconsin than in any other place in the community, in the country. So we said, well, we think we've got something here. And then we took a look at what would be the impact of the creative industries. Yes, it's 67,000 people. It's $2 billion in wages. It's 4.2% of our jobs. We thought it was interesting that it was 4,000 individual businesses, including those freelancers, and 50% of those businesses are under 10 employees. So you're talking quintessential small business entrepreneurs, the sweet spot of certainly where our new Republican state government is going. But it not only is an industry sector that has growth potential in and of its own right, but it seriously impacts other business growth. It helps businesses be more competitive, more creative. It certainly differentiates products and services. And it certainly supports a strong tourism and hospitality business, as well as fostering a lot of artistic opportunities. But it doesn't stop there. It improves the regional attractiveness. Creatives attract creatives. Creatives don't stop being creative at 5 o'clock. They're looking for other ways in which they can live and learn and work and play in the community. It also helps define quality of place. So what we say to the community is an investment in the creative industries not only grows a pretty significant industry sector, but it brings a threefold return back to the community. So what did we find? Basically, we found that the creative industries is an economic cluster worth putting emphasis on and, frankly, worth crowing about. We also found with any economic industry cluster, you have to connect it, you have to convene it, you have to put the tent around everybody, invite everybody in. You also have to find support systems and voices that can speak on behalf of an integrated economic cluster. And so that's what we decided to do in putting forward strategic initiatives that would help move the creative industries forward. Growing them into a signature driver was an interesting one. At the same time that our Arts Board agency was eliminated from our state, that the Arts Board funding was decimated 65%, the remainder, only that matched the NEA, unlike a lot of other states, got folded into our tourism department. At the same time that was happening, we began conversations with our new State Secretary of Commerce. He has a department that's called Business and Industry Cluster Development. We have convinced him through this research that the creative industries will be a cluster of focused economic development at the state level. The city, our partner in the MICD grant, has also established an Office of Creative Industries and established a capital stream that's going to be available to the nonprofits and for-profits in the creative industries. The other thing that we've done is expand the region's creative talent base, another very big significant initiative for our region. So we decided as the Cultural Alliance that we were going to shift our business model, and we were going to shift it pretty quickly. As you can see, the mission shift didn't entail a big change in words, but boy, is it a big culture shift. We reported the final results in January. By the end of May, we had new articles of incorporation, we had a new governance structure, we had a new board, and we've begun strategic planning. The pace is quick to keep the momentum going and keep the creative industries alive in the civic community's mind. So why make this transition? This was a big leap for us. Well, we have found that a new, wider lens has made a huge difference. It's provided new thinking opportunities. It's provided a different way of looking at the creative contribution. It's focused on the priorities, frankly, of our community and our state on economic development, on jobs and businesses. It fosters collaboration. And we found that you need to meet the audience where it is. If we were going to bridge and change the understanding, we need to bridge and change the language. And that's what we've done. And when I was asked recently what was the most significant learning for us that came out of this, the bottom line is we are now at the regional business development table. We were not at the regional business development table as a cultural alliance or as an arts community in our particular region. This has now got us at the table. Once we're at the table, now we can influence, and now we can help shift the conversation. So what we're currently doing is connecting and convening and leveraging, both virtually with our new web connectivity system, as well as in person with our new networking strategy. We're fostering on keeping the energy going and people getting engaged with each other. We've also been asked to get involved in a new space development. Speaking about creative placemaking, our mall downtown has been vacant many thousands of square feet for a long time, and our mall developers took a look at what was happening in St. Louis and a couple of other places, and we got together with them and talked about how we can convert the space in the downtown mall to creative ecosystem, both for the nonprofits and the for-profits. So we convened a meeting with the creative folks around the community, both nonprofit and for-profit, with the Grand Avenue folks, as well as an architecture firm, and we put forward, we can make this a creative ecosystem. We can make this a creative spaces incubator. And in fact, we then had tours of all the different spaces that were available. We now have 2 creative businesses, for-profit creative businesses there, a theater company, individual artist studio, and you can see on the left-hand side there one of the 5 places in the country where the Veterans Administration has established an incubator for veterans to establish and develop their own innovative businesses. So we are now in the forefront of developing a new space for creatives in downtown Milwaukee. What's the response been to this transition? Well, it's been interesting. For the for-profit creative businesses, it's been highly positive. And let me tell you a story. At our reporting out in January, I noticed that one of the people coming was the CEO of a flooring company in one of our southern counties, Racine County. And I went up to him and I said, "Why are you here? You know, how did you find us? We knew we were connecting creatives to creatives and businesses to creatives, but why was a flooring manufacturing there?" And he said, "Well, we're here because we read about your work." He said 2 reasons. One is we think we're creative and we want to find new ways to have more creative flooring. Secondly, we want to bypass the middleman. We want to go past the construction list of vendors and the development companies. We want to get to the architects who understand creativity and design. And you're providing the opportunity for us to meet all those people. And sure enough, small manufacturers started to converge and meet with us. Within a month of that meeting, he had hired one of our visual artists to design a new flooring pattern. That artist now has a royalty fee, and he's since then hired 2 other artists. They have royalty fees. He has products that no one else in the world has. A metal fabricating company called Wagner Company in the inner city has also done the same thing and are connecting with artists and designers. And one of Patrice's favorite companies, a company called Flux Design, which is a metal manufacturer and designer, I introduced the CEO of this flooring company at our next event to the CEO of Flux Design, and it turned out Flux Design was looking for some unique flooring for 3 of their clients, and 3 quotes were provided from the flooring company to Flux Design on the spot. So we have found connections through this convening to business and bottom line profitability that we never anticipated. So our next steps are to move through the strategic planning, to improve our website. One of the things we designed as a part of our NEA grant was a Creatives in Residence program, and we're going to implement that. We're also providing some new thinking around some of the things we've been learning. We have a grant from Northwestern Mutual Foundation to look at reframing the conversation from arts education to creative education, getting CEOs and HR professionals around the table to talk about creative skill sets, creative gaps, and where we can deliver those and help deliver that through arts education. So we're looking at a lot of new things. And I also have a question in reading Ann Markison's NEA Creative Placemaking Report, where the definition of creative placemaking is partners from public, private, nonprofit, and community sectors strategically shaping the physical and social character of a neighborhood, town, city, or region around arts and cultural activities. So we're asking ourselves, can we strategically shape community around creative activities, creative industries, and link it somehow to the creative industries and the creative economy so that the for-profit creative businesses and the non-arts individuals are absolutely part of, at the table, and part of creating the creative ecosystem in our community. So that's where we've come from. That's where we are. We're very grateful to the NEA support for this. We're asking a lot of questions about where we go from here and how we make it all work, but we've been thrilled with the response of the community and being at the development table at the state and the regional level. So thank you, NEA, for that opportunity.
Thanks, Christine. That was great. Finally, I would like to welcome Lorna Jordan, an artist working on designing a new Central Park for Madison, Wisconsin, a place that I very happily spent a couple of very formative college years. She's bringing an artist's vision, creativity, and problem-solving skills to a challenge that involves aesthetic considerations. It should look good. Functional considerations. It needs to work well for the citizens. And logistical concerns. The park is a capped brownfield that is also one of the lowest elevation points in the city, so rainwater drainage is an issue. I last checked in about these plans almost a year ago, so I'm excited to hear the update. Lorna?
Thank you so much, Chairman Landesman. I'm so happy to be here to talk with you all about my work in Central Park in Madison, Wisconsin. I just completed a phase where I conducted research and met extensively with the community. It's a very engaged community in Madison, and developed an art approach and participated in a reconsideration of the master plan, which was approved on June 7th, as was the art approach. As mentioned, Central Park is a capped brownfield, and we're planning to transform the site into an aesthetic, sustainable environment that provides a platform for community activities. And the City of Madison happily received an MICD grant in support of planning work that's already been completed and design work that's yet to come. Because of the grant and the positive response to the art approach, the reach of the art in the revised master plan is much greater than anticipated. So the grant has provided a springboard for an expanded scope of art that's greater than when the grant was awarded. So again, along with Mayor Glover, it's really provided some leverage for the work, and I'm very happy about that. So I'd like to talk a little bit about my philosophy, as well as past projects in Renton, Washington, and Scottsdale, Arizona, drawing upon sculpture, ecology, architecture, and theater and infrastructure. My artworks engage communities with place. They range from green infrastructures that enhance watersheds and connect people to the cycles and mysteries of water, to site-specific sculptural pavilions and gathering places that embody progressions of form, to media works that incorporate light and projections, and all use changing cycles and the drama of animated sequences to heighten experiences of the environment. Waterworks Gardens in Renton, Washington is a good example of the art of green infrastructure and placemaking, which is something that we're working on in Madison. The artwork is an aesthetic and functional 8-acre earth-water sculpture, and it's located on the northern border of a water treatment plant, kind of an unlikely spot to make a place, but it actually turned out to be a good place. Stormwater runoff is collected from the grounds of the water reclamation plant, and it's put through 11 ponds that settle out contaminants and sediments. And then once clean, the water is used to enhance what was a very low-grade wetland on site. So really, we're using natural systems, which it provides a foil to the industrial systems used elsewhere on site. I mean, the very beginning of the project, I was trying to think about how I could bring an artist's sensibility to the task of treating water. And my idea was to create this natural systems way of treating water that was a sort of a complement to what was happening elsewhere on site. Early on in the project, I ran into a quote in the book of pattern language that set the tone for my work, and it really resonated with me. And that is, as marvelous as the high technology of water treatment and distribution has become, it doesn't satisfy the emotional need to make contact with the local reservoirs and to understand the cycles of water and its limits and its mysteries. So the project also has 5 garden rooms that lay over top of this earth-water sculpture. And the progression of garden rooms engages people on an intimate scale and connects them to the cycles and mysteries of water. So as you're going through the garden rooms, you encounter water in all these different sort of states: mysterious, working, beautiful, life-sustaining. And the earth-water sculpture and the garden rooms are all kind of abstractly expressed as this large-scale flowering plant, symbolic of the filtering power of plants to treat water. This is the entry to the project. It's called the knoll. It's kind of a root-like entry. Here the water starts underfoot, under a grate, which is how a lot of water is handled, get it out of sight, out of mind. There are 10 basalt columns that are arranged in forced perspective to an overlook. And at the overlook, the water is daylighted. So it's bringing it to the surface, and it's then it goes through a system of 11 stormwater treatment ponds. And from this spot, you can also view the enhanced wetland beyond. Another room is called the grotto. Craggy shotcrete walls, pools, seeps, and plantings create this dank, fertile environment. And benches are tucked into the walls, and we used a lot of recycled materials throughout the project, and here we used recycled marble and granite. In the release, cleansed water passes from the pond system to the wetland, and then from the wetland to a creek. And the enhanced wetlands provide improved flood control, water quality, and habitat functions, but then, of course, it's the aesthetics as well that we were interested in. People get married at Waterworks Gardens. I'm very interested in how design inspires people to use a site in a variety of ways. And it is somewhat unlikely for people to get married at a water treatment plant, but here you have it. So the project was able to succeed truly because the agency, the community, the arts commissions, and the consultant team all worked together in a cooperative way. Habitat's been created, water's being treated, the community is engaged, and we hope that an aesthetic place has been made, and on a more emotional level, that people can make contact with the cycles and mysteries of water. The next project is called Terrace Cascade, and it's located in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's in a desert wash. So this is an environmental artwork that's inspired by the marks that both humans and water make on the desert. It's expressed as both a miniature watershed and an abstraction of the human body, and it provides a means for people to imagine their place within the larger Indian Bend Wash, which is a watershed with alternating drought and flood. Very different from Seattle, where we have plenty of water, mostly all year round. But here it's either, flood or drought. It's a very different scenario. But taking advantage of the topography, there are a series of rib-like terraces and vertebrae-like cascades that are nestled into the hillside. So harvested stormwater intermittently flows down the cascades to irrigate a mesquite bosque that offers respite from the desert sun. This shows a detail of the terraces, walls, and plantings. Oops. And the artwork also acts as a gateway and is part of a regional trail system. And that's true of Waterworks Gardens as well. You can be moving along the trail and just happen upon these projects. So it's really connected into the interstices of moving around a city. So this shows the path winding through the site, allowing visitors to experience the terraces and pathways and plantings. And desert plantings are so remarkable. They're very sculptural, and I chose them in particular for their sculptural shapes and colors and textures. So it's sort of like assemblage art or something, and the terraces act as these kind of showcases for desert plants. And part of my interest was to encourage homeowners to rip out their lawns and put in native plantings. So now back to Madison, Central Park in Madison, Wisconsin. As I mentioned, so far I've been working on research and have been meeting with the community and worked on an art approach and participated in the revision of a master plan. Research is a really key part of my work. I spent about 4 months in research, understanding the community and the place and the forces that have created Madison. And I think it's really important to get it right, to have that amount of time to explore and understand. So the character of the Marquette neighborhood in which the park is located is funky, progressive, and richly textured. And on the other side of the park, there's a light industrial area. And the idea is for the park to become a draw for green businesses and workers. As mentioned, we held several community meetings, and I was really impressed with how engaged people were. And it was, community meetings. This was, it was almost like group mind. Everyone was thinking together. It was amazing, just the level of sort of intensity and interconnectedness. It was quite remarkable. So in order to communicate ideas during the art approach phase, I prepared a series of presentation boards to present ideas and my research. I think most importantly, I want to capture this community energy and to provide for activities after the project's built. So, if doing studio work in the past, you do your work and then it's done. With this kind of work, you prepare your work and this life just begins. And there's something quite remarkable about doing work in that way, where it has a much larger life than you do, and or scope than your own work, and that it goes on beyond when you finish designing and constructing it. I was also interested in integrating local landscape typologies and considering seasonal change and providing a place for wildlife. These were all things that the community was interested in as well. As part of my research, I studied the industrial and natural history of the area, and the activities of some industries that were located on site were the cause of the site becoming a brownfield through contamination, mostly by fuel. So, as mentioned, the site is now a brownfield, capped brownfield, awaiting development of Central Park. But even before that, the site was a marsh in the 1900s, early 1900s. So this and other marshes in the area were filled to allow for development of the industries. So I plan to bring back some of this marsh idea through the integration of green infrastructure at the site. I'm fascinated by the site's location between Lakes Mendota and Monona, and by the city's nickname, the City of Four Lakes. And perhaps most profoundly, I'm awed by the effect of glaciers that created these lakes around Madison, as well as acting upon Wisconsin's terrain. The glaciers sculpted an entire landscape of earth and water forms, lakes, moraines, kettles, eskers, drumlins, and more. Much of my past work has been inspired by the poetics of water and the way that water sculpts land. I've been particularly interested in the water cycle as this mighty force that carves the Earth's surface into watersheds. And as a sculptor, it's just fascinating, to be in a plane and look down and see these sculpted landscapes. But here I'm focusing on the sculpting power of water in its solid form, ice. So these are diagrams that demonstrate the forces of carving and deposition and the resulting forms caused by glacial action. And these forces in their remnant landscapes provide a springboard for the design of Central Park. We want to take it from being just a really flat area to a more three-dimensional space. And after I leave here, I'm going to Madison, and I'm going to be touring glacial landscapes with a geologist who is also head of the task force for Central Park. So I'm going to become immersed in the glaciated landscapes of Wisconsin. I'm very excited about it. So now I'm going to talk about the conceptual framework and the goals for upcoming design work. The environmental art for Central Park provides a prototype for development of public space in the 21st century. It embodies Madison's creative environmentalism and community energy. Calling for dramatic, three-dimensional earth-water sculptures, the park is activated by an interplay of forms, processes, and experiences. The landscape is inspired by the area's history and phenomena, the forces that have played upon the region over time, particularly glacial forces. And as mentioned, an interactive environment provides a platform for a host of creative activities and community activities. The artworks have functional aspects to them, but more than that, they're expressive. I think you can create function that really has no aesthetic power, or as Chairman Landesman was talking about, like attracting people to live within these landscapes. So that's an important part of it. The idea is to connect communities to each other and to the systems that sustain them, and to draw people to kind of live outdoors within these landscapes. So just a few of the goals of the art approach are to express the power and gigantism of glaciers and their action on the landscape, develop a hierarchy of small, medium, and large gathering spaces, choreograph flows, so thinking about movement through the site, and conceive of the place as a memory theater that triggers internal emotions and narratives. This is a diagram of the artworks and their locations. Much of my work has been focused on one block of the park. Artworks include an amphitheater, earthworks, pathways, pavilions, cultural gathering areas where you can hear a poetry reading or an acoustic performance or have a cafe-style conversation, small art exhibition, and natural gathering areas and demonstration gardens that include edible landscapes, wildlife gardens, and stormwater treatment gardens. This diagram shows the kinds of activities that can occur in various parts of the site. Activation is key to my approach. And here's the approved master plan that incorporates some of my early design work and art approach concepts. So thinking of the future, the goal is to develop public space that is a sustainable landscape that provides a platform for community activities. Examples of the art of sustainability include green infrastructure, which includes native plantings, stormwater management. It also includes other green strategies such as the use of low-energy lighting, like LEDs, and use of solar panels to generate electricity. It also includes reuse of materials. So a sustainable landscape then provides a platform for community activities. At Central Park, just some of the things that you can do include experience performances and art exhibitions, wander through a farmer's market, watch people doing community gardening, stroll or bicycle along pathways. You can watch a film, listen to live music, sit within a pavilion, appreciate wildlife gardens and native plant gardens, and become immersed in a choreography of flows. So the environmental art for Central Park provides a prototype for development of public space in the 21st century. Central Park is in some ways a blank slate, and it has great potential to become a productive park and a place to explore the relationships between nature and culture. The plan is to transform the site into the sustainable aesthetic environment that is platform for community activities. Tapping into their memories and imaginations, people can have experiences that range from the scientific and observable to the archetypal and sublime. And in closing, I was pleased to hear Chairman Landesman, your reference to culture sheds. I hadn't heard that before, but I realized that it's germane to what we're doing. We're really enhancing the Yahara River watershed by developing this site with green infrastructure and so on. And then we're layering the culture shed over top of it. So that was a sort of an aha moment for me, and I appreciated it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lorna. I can't wait to see what you devise for Madison and to go there and enjoy it. It's going to be an exciting prospect, and I know you're going to do really exciting work there. So thanks. I would like now to open things up for a conversation with our council members. Does anyone have any questions or comments for the panelists? Jim.
Ms. Harris, you mentioned in one of the PowerPoint slides that in the transition that the for-profit seemed to embrace this change and the nonprofit, I forget your term put on there, but it was not an easy one. So I was curious to know a little bit more about the rocky side for the nonprofits as you made this change.
Thank you. We're still exploring the transition. The challenge has been we were an organization, a membership organization, as a cultural organization. So our mission was to serve the nonprofit arts. So in making this transition, in including then the for-profit arts and the individual creatives, the nonprofit arts began to feel threatened, began to feel that why aren't you just defending who we are, speaking about who we are, advocating for us for who we are and what we provide for the community. Why are we kowtowing to the business community? Were some of the feedback that we got. Some of them have been very enlightened about it, have made very strong contacts and partnerships and are finding new audience and new donors and new product opportunities. But a number of them are still very resistant and very siloed in their thinking that we're here, we provide quality of place, we deserve to be here, can't you just support us for who we are? So we're still in a transition with that conversation. And the whole point is to make it a win-win and a both and.
First of all, I just want to thank you and congratulate each of you. Your presentations were so inspiring and awesome. It's just fabulous. And it's just amazing how a $100,000 grant and great leadership can accomplish wonderful things. Mayor Glover, I'm curious, the role that your participation in the Mayor's Institute on City Design had on all of this. I mean, I'm wondering if you came to that with a lot of this already in mind, or if that was actually, you know, a moment that helped you think of all these plans.
Certainly the Mayor's Institute on City Design was a seminal part of helping all of this to come together. I think I and other mayors all across the country owe a great debt of gratitude to Mayor Joe Riley for instituting the MICD and helping us to think in a different way, to understand the role and the capacity and the power of a mayor's office to serve as the catalytic force to help to bring these types of opportunities forward. So probably one of the best things that occurred in terms of this whole series of events lining up was the fact that I was a member of the Mayor's Institute class of 2008, a full year plus prior to this tragic fire. And so I had a different prism through which to be able to see my role, and certainly that night and leading to the morning of the 26th of August 2009 saw this as an opportunity to bring to bear some of those skills, some of that insight, some of that knowledge that I gained from my several days spent with Mayor Riley and Mayor Nutter and other mayors from across the country who were part of my group. And that lined up with the energy that came from the community of volunteers and arts patrons in Shreveport, and here we are today. So without question, the MICD was a critical aspect of this overall effort, and certainly you all supported them in providing these opportunities. Would not, were it not for that, we would not be here before you today.
Thanks. Lorna, I have a question for you. One of the problems I think we face when we do planning grants, grants that are made at the in incipient projects that are being just really conceived at a certain point, is whether the projects are actually going to follow through and get built. And I know in Madison there's been a change of administration, and when I was in Madison, Paul Soglin was the mayor, and now I'm hearing that there's a Mayor Soglin again. I figure it must have been the grandson of the mayor that was.
I think it's the same one.
And it turns out it was the same. It's the same Paul Soglin. Does that then go back to square one? How do we know that what we appropriated money for will in fact follow through and get built? Because I think there are all kinds of vulnerabilities in the process as you go along, and you're still at the planning stages.
Well, we are just entering the design phase. In fact, on Tuesday, we're having a meeting to figure out how to begin our design work. And there are several grants that have a certain span to them, which acts as a great motivator for the city to get moving. So it's my understanding that there's not a threat that it won't happen. The question is will it be phased, and what will those phases be? I think that's more the question. I think the grand vision has been embraced by the community. I know there has been another mayor, and they're preparing budgets now, and I think that happens in three months.
Well, there's always a vulnerability, particularly in these times, of budget constraints suddenly arising and people going back to the drawing board and looking again. And
I think the grants are part of, as I say, the driver, that the grants are in place, and there's motivation to avail ourselves of those.
Christine, you gave us so much information in a short time, and I'm still trying to digest all of it. But when you were talking about the vacant downtown shopping mall being developed, and you said we're developing it, who is actually managing that whole process, and how is that working?
This is an example of where we are following the energy from the creative community. We had intended to put an inventory of creative spaces and people looking for a creative space on the website in about a year. But the mall had this real pressing need to begin to look at alternative uses for empty space. The Veterans Administration had come in and rented this space for their incubator program. Then they started to come to us and met a couple of other for-profit creative businesses along the way. Then there seemed to be some energy coming, so we then became the convener. That's our role now as the Creative Alliance. So we convened the creative community around all those spaces, presented it to them and said, who's interested? What would you like to see happen here? And now what we're doing is we're continuing to facilitate that process. There's a suite of about 5,000 square feet that could be one of these kind of hotel desk space where you're coming in and you're renting conference space, or you're renting an office for an hour or a half a day or for a year. And we're looking to make that just for creatives, and then we're looking at managing that and potentially putting our offices there. There's only 3 of us putting our offices there, which is a new endeavor for us, but part of our new model is to find new sources of revenue, and we could actually have that be a revenue generation to support the Creative Alliance down the road. So we're just in the process of exploring that right now. At the moment, we're still convening the community to see what the interest is.
Is there a difference between the nonprofit organizations and the for-profit creative industries in this whole process?
Not in the space process, no. They all negotiate separately with the mall developers. They're giving it away for $1 to $3 a square foot. So it's very amenable for a lot of people. They basically want traffic there, and they found a lot of energy just with the 4 businesses that are already there. So at the moment, there's no difference in their eyes or our eyes, whether it's a nonprofit theater company, individual artists, or a for-profit web tech company.
Christine, also, you mentioned we. Now, was the Cultural Alliance a membership group of nonprofit organizations that's now morphed into a membership group of the Creative Alliance, or what's the structure beyond your 3-person office?
Right. The Cultural Alliance was formed in 2005 as a resources and services organization for the nonprofit arts organizations. It's never been a funding or a re-granting organization. It's providing advocacy, technical support services, research. So it's been that hub of resources and services. There's a membership component to it. It's a fairly small revenue piece, and it's not a voting membership, but you get discounts on access to certain services. We've morphed that now into a new membership program with the Creative Alliance that's linked to networking benefits, website benefits, and access to different resources and services. And there, again, other than there's a nonprofit rate for membership, it goes everywhere from individual membership all the way up to corporate membership. So the membership for the Creative Alliance is a broader spectrum, and the nonprofits are a piece of that.
Just a rather narrow question. Where in Milwaukee is this? Is this the arcade on Wisconsin Avenue, or is this in the 3rd Ward?
You know Milwaukee. The Grand Avenue Mall is located on Wisconsin Avenue between the river and the Convention District. And the eastern building, which is an old, beautiful 1800s building, that's the building that's being focused on for the creative businesses space location. They have a lot of empty space there, and so that's the space that's being concentrated on at the moment. So it's right in the heart of downtown.
Okay. Thank you all again so much. Please join me in thanking Mayor Glover, Christine Harris, and Lorna Jordan. I have to say this has been one of our more informative sessions, and it's going to continue. Finally, I would like to turn to Blue Star Museums. For the 2nd summer in a row, the National Endowment for the Arts has partnered with Blue Star families and museums across the country to offer free admission all summer long to active duty military families. Last year, we launched this program with some 600 participating museums. As of this morning, thanks to the Anderson Abruzzo Albuquerque International Balloon Museum, we are at 1,475 participating museums. It has been absolutely thrilling for me to see the way this program has taken off, and I would like to share 3 brief videos with you. The first is a clip from a CNN piece that ran over Memorial Day weekend. The second is a piece from the Pentagon Channel, which is both broadcast and web streamed to military audiences all around the globe. And finally, a short piece that the NEA created during the press launch for this event in San Diego. Together, I think they paint an excellent portrait of this program. Can we have the videos, please?
Memorial Day for the 2nd straight year means a special marriage between the nation's military communities and museums. Take a look at this. In all 50 states, also D.C. and Puerto Rico and the American territories, more than 1,300 museums are now opening their doors to service members and their families free of charge. Look at that guy. Now, that does begin today, lasts all summer long, and it's a program designed just for families like the Tillmans. There they are, joining me live from Washington. You have Lieutenant Colonel Tony Tillman, Nolene Tillman, and their 2 beautiful daughters, Zoe and Sophia. And let's put up the map so we can show folks at home if you're curious as to how you can figure out, which cities. Nolene, walk me through. I mean, I've been to the website today and I was reading the blog. Basically, you just click on a state and it opens up the participating museums?
Absolutely. And once you click on your state, you can see all the museums that are participating, and then just click on the link. Gives you hours, gives you directions, takes you right to that particular museum's website.
Thanks to all of you, and happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day to you too.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brooke. The Blue Star families and the National Endowment of the Arts have teamed up for the second annual Blue Star Museums program. The program opens more than 1,300 museums across America to military families free of charge. Petty Officer Lowell Witness explains.
Blue Star families and the National Endowment for the Arts mark the start of the second annual Blue Star Museums program at the San Diego Museum of Art.
Blue Star Museums is a partnership among the National Endowment for the Arts, Blue Star families, and museums across America that will offer free admission to all of our active duty military personnel and their families from Memorial Day through Labor Day this summer.
Giving military members and their families an important look at the cultural heritage they work to defend.
I would like every military family to make museums part of their summer battle rhythm. Wherever you're going, if you're PCSing, if you're visiting the grandparents, if you're going home to see mom and dad, check out what Blue Star Museum is on your path and go in and see it. It'll make your life better.
From San Diego, I'm Petty Officer Lowell Whitman.
I liked all the paintings because they were very cool. Because I remember some of the artists who painted them because I read the books about them.
Any advantage that the military can get.
Especially with kids.
Yeah, we'll definitely take it.
Yeah, especially with twins. You have two in diapers at the same time.
Unfortunately, I haven't been around enough to frequent the park as often as the kids. Most of my deployments, my wife brings them down to help spend some time with them while I'm out forward deployed. But I'm finally being able to get some time to go through some of the museums.
I think it's a nice way to give something to the military.
I think it's probably one of the best things that they could do for the military, because a lot of the people come from other states and they just don't really know what's available to them while they're here during their enlistment. So it's nice to be able to know and get out and see more of the state they're in and just be bored on base with nothing to do.
And it sounds like a really good program. I know I'm definitely going to bring my family back and come to more of the museums and all take advantage of it as much as we can.
I know, it's good. Okay, so let me know when you're ready.
Memorial Day for the second straight year.
Okay, thanks. I would now like to ask Mike, I hope I get this right, Harasimowicz? Okay, to join us. Mike is currently a Vice Wing Commander of the 70th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Wing stationed at Fort Meade. Previously, Mike was in the White House as part of Mrs. Obama and Dr. Biden's work with military families. Mike, thanks for taking time to come here. I'm really proud to have you here.
Chairman Lundesman.
Thanks for coming.
I appreciate being here. And I really do want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you for all that you made possible, because, you saw the looks on families, on their faces. They were thrilled to be there. You hit the magic word free. Sometimes that in the military that really resonates, but there's something a little different about it, because it slows down the pace. There's not the stress of, I may only get to go to this museum once. I need to rush right through it. And if it's a museum in our community, it means we can savor it. We can go back, we can take time, we can spend a section or time on it, one given section, and absorb it. And I think as parents, in a pretty crazy operations tempo, we want to, experience it all. But sometimes for kids, it's important to just take it slow and just to, like I said, savor every moment in those museums. I will say that I just came from what we call Right Start. It's a program within the military that as new people come into a base, It's our opportunity to say welcome. Here's what this community offers, and here's how we like to conduct business. Well, considering I'm new to that community, I was in the audience, but I was also the guest speaker to open it up. And one of the first things I mentioned was Blue Star Museums. It is such a great way to say, welcome to the community. There are great things to do. Don't get caught up in the hustle and bustle and miss out an opportunity this summer to get out and experience what great opportunities lie all across America. So I stand before you representing 2.2 million military-connected kids, over 1 million military spouses, all our service members, sailors, Marines, airmen, soldiers, Coast Guardsmen, to say thank you for just the tremendous work. On a different note, on a professional note, this program, to me personally and professionally, was the little engine that could. As I walked into the White House, pretty bright-eyed, eager to take on the world. Excuse me. How do we provide the best support to military families was given to me as, how do we make this program real? Now, the Department of Defense has a fairly big budget. They like to do things their own way. And at first I'm like, how are we going to generate enough interest across the federal government to really reach out to military families? And when I heard about this program, this is exactly how. This is a way that we can generate interest at the community level. We can reach out and touch county after county, state after state, and develop a program where people recognize that, hey, the military is part of our environment. Let's offer them, let's open our doors to them and give them a chance to relax, some respite from the daily grind that we go through. I will say that the White House can be a little bit ornery, and this is one of my favorite stories of just the bureaucracy of things, that we had a teleconference. The wholly impersonal teleconference of what is the game plan that National Endowment of the Arts wants to offer this White House broad policy effort. And there was some initial discussion, and then immediately went into the what ifs and how tos and all the details that, frankly, were in the works. And I didn't like the tone of the meeting. I didn't like the tone of the conversation because it was missing a very key element of gratitude. And as a military guy, I wanted the National Endowment of the Arts, Jamie and Carolyn, to know that we really appreciated your organization, this council, this room, stepping out and say, we want to do something more. We want to make a difference in the communities. And I did what Jamie has told me as the unthinkable, is that I hung up that phone after that meeting, feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and I walked down to this office and I said, I want to meet the people on the other end of that phone and say thank you. Thank you for doing this. And the tone of this since has been one of those where it's been a joint partnership. And frankly, when I brought in the Department of Labor, Department of Education, Department of Interior, Energy, and the list goes on, every major cabinet level agency came to the table to let's brainstorm ways to do this better, to support military families better. I would always embarrass Carolyn Spector and say, the National Endowment of the Arts is out front, and you guys have to catch up. So again, that was a great motivation. I tell you, the way this policy program has progressed from concept to commitments to now it's a joining forces effort between NGOs, between corporate America, between community leaders and the government in a way that says thank you to the military. We recognize what you're doing for us every day, and in some small way we can give back. And I love the fact that the museums, in a variety of different ways, are giving back. I will say that the arts has a special place in societies, certainly in an element of protracted conflict. We're trying to, everybody in this room and in our nation is going through how do we place what's going on in Afghanistan and Iraq? How do we place what's going on in Libya in our own memories and our minds? The arts help us do that. The arts help us express the way we feel. They bring reconciliation in our hearts, and it's a truly beautiful thing. When I watched The Great Game came in to discuss the long history of Afghanistan through the Shakespeare Theater, and through partnerships with our British allies, was a tremendous way to express what Afghanistan means to us in humanity. Doug Wilson, the OSD Public Affairs Undersecretary, gave a great, or Assistant Secretary, excuse me, gave a great speech about how the arts bring together different parts of life, of our society, in a way that begins healing. And I was really touched by that. But that means what we are doing here within the museums is the same thing. We're bringing families to understand what our culture is all about, understand what our local communities are all about. It allows families to reconcile and reconnect, and it also educates, and we're building for the future. So that is a beautiful part about it. I will say from a personal aspect, I'm also a father of 4. My son has a fairly significant medical condition, and I'm getting all teary-eyed. But he's a cancer survivor and a liver transplant recipient. And bringing him to museums when he can't play sports is a great way for him to heal. And so he's a tough kid. We're a tough family. The military's tough, but we also like to embrace the arts. And I appreciate each and every one of you who've been a part of this for opening those many doors to so many museums and allowing us as a nation to heal through this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. That was great. I should stop being surprised when we encounter warmth and emotion from people in the military. I think of everyone in the I came in thinking everyone in the military is a tough guy, and we had a wonderful meeting with Admiral Nathan at NICO and Walter Reed the other day. I've gotten to know Doug Wilson. Where are these tough guys? They've been incredibly passionate and committed and excited about not only what they do, but about the potential for our collaboration with the military and with military families. And bluntly, it's been one of the most surprising and gratifying aspects of my tenure here so far has been that relationship. And thank you for coming, and thank you for engaging all of us as you have. It means a lot. Okay. Any questions or comments from council members? Jim.
Well, first of all, as a museum person, to hear that passionate presentation was
pretty neat,
heart-wrenching to what the role of a museum in many ways in a community is. So it's very gratifying. And before we get away, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about this summer's meeting. To see the expansion of the research aspect of the guidelines and grants, I think, is huge. We saw in the presentation about Milwaukee today how much research is playing a point of how institutions have to make their mark anymore, the metrics that are demanded of us now, of other governments, of foundations, and frankly, many corporate givers. That's going to be a real service to the field. And likewise, I think some of the small things NEA does, the expansion of the media arts to embrace a broader sense of technology and where we're going with younger audiences and trying to stay out of front of audiences. I commend the staff for both of these things, and job well done.
I think we're increasingly going to have to pick up on measurements and metrics as validation of what we're doing as we start to try to look at the effects of our work. Of course, it's very difficult in the arts because so much of what we do does have an emotional component. Some of it's very long term. It can change a life in a profound way, but that's hard necessarily to measure quantitatively. But at the particular intersection that we're talking about, which is where the arts meet, I'd like to say where the arts meet the real world, in areas like neighborhood revitalization, economic development, community building. I think there are going to be increasingly ways to keep track of what that is. Mayor Bloomberg has one of my favorite expressions. He said once, he said, in God we trust, all others bring data. So we're trying to, with Sunil's help, we're trying to increasingly bring the data. Okay, one last thing, the NEA offices are especially full at the moment thanks to a wonderful class of summer interns. We have 12 interns working in various NEA offices this summer, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for the work they will be doing this summer and have been doing. May I ask any of our interns who are here today to please stand up if we have any. Cool. I know what your pay is. So my dad once put a classified ad in the paper. Some of you already know this, for an assistant that he was hiring, and I felt he put in the perfect ad that would attract just the right people as we have with our interns. The ad said, "Long hours, low pay, interesting people." So I assume you've come for the long hours, low pay, and hopefully interesting people. Okay, I would also like to thank the entire NEA staff for all the work that went into preparing for the past day and a half of council meetings and for all their work over the past year. I'm incredibly proud to lead this agency and incredibly lucky to know this group of dedicated public servants. My final piece of business is to announce that the National Council on the Arts has reviewed the applications and guidelines presented to them, and a tally of the council members' ballots reveals that all recommendations for funding and rejection have passed. Phew. Are there any additional comments, questions, or discussions from the council members? In that case, the 173rd meeting of the National Council of the Arts is now adjourned.